I did my video on the coaster Mount Rushmores of each US state. Now, let's continue the state theme. Every state that has a theme park wants a coaster that'll draw people from far and wide, but they also run the danger of having a coaster that'll put people to sleep, or worse, make them seek medical attention. Today, let's look at the extremes. This is episode 1 of 2, looking at each state's best and worst coaster. Let me clarify when I say worst coaster. I'm not counting kiddie coasters or family coasters, or those dark ride coasters that are barely coasters. It has to be a coaster that was built to be thrilling, but it just isn't good anymore, or it was never good. I have a ton of personal experience with 31 states, 2 more states that have a decent number of coasters, but I just haven't been to, and 17 that are barely worth mentioning. Let's start with those. Alabama's best coaster is Rampage at Alabama Adventure, and the rest of the state just has kids rides, except for Rollin' Thunder and Crazy Mouse at OA, which I guess is the worst by default. Arizona has one big coaster, Desert Storm at Castles and Coasters, and that's sad. Louisiana's Blue Bayou Dixie Landon has a boomerang called Raging Cajun, and a Zyklon Galaxy called Gilboa's Galaxy. You can pick which one's the best and the worst. It doesn't seem to matter much. South Dakota has 2 coasters from the German mountain coaster manufacturer, Wiegand, I'm not sure how to say it. But one of them is a traditional mountain coaster called Rushmore Mountain Coaster, and they also have a suspended coaster called Buffalo Hunt. Both of these look like a good time. Vermont is another state with 2 mountain coasters. One of them is Timber Ripper Mountain Coaster, and the other one is called Beast Mountain Coaster. And this one is nearly 2,000 feet longer, so I'm deeming it the best. Wyoming has 1 coaster, this mountain coaster called Cowboy Coaster. West Virginia's only adult coaster is Big Dipper at Camden Park, dating back to 1958, and maybe I'll make my way here at some point to try it out. Maine has a halfway decent coaster collection, with Excalibur at Funtown Splashtown USA being its best. And of the other 4 I have to pick from for the worst, I have to stay in the same park with their Wild Mouse. Then you got the ones that have coasters, but they're all kids rides. Kansas, Mississippi, Nebraska, and North Dakota, as well as the states without a single permanent coaster in operation. Alaska, Delaware, Hawaii, Montana, and Rhode Island. How about those 2 states that I haven't gotten around to yet? One is far away from me, and the other one borders my state. The one that's way out there is New Hampshire. If I had to choose a best, I'd say maybe Yankee Cannonball at Canopy Lake Park, the PTC Woody from 1936, and the same park probably has the worst in Canopy Corkscrew, just based on reputation. The other state that's all up in my business is Arkansas, with Magic Springs being their main park and giving us our best and worst. I'll give X Coaster the nod for the best, the Mara Ride Skyloop, and the worst is Arkansas Twister, the relocated wooden coaster that's apparently dreadful. I'll get here eventually to see just how good this park is. On to the main list, and we'll do this in reverse order of coasters that I've ridden in that state. So just note, these will be ordered based on the coasters that I've ridden, but if I need to go off the board to grab their best or worst coaster, I'll do it. I'll also mention the state's total coaster count. First up is Colorado. This state has 23 coasters, but I've only ridden 3 because Elitch Gardens is terrible. None of the coasters that I rode were any good, so for the best one, I'll go off the board, but stay within the same park and pick Sidewinder, the Aero Shuttle Loop. I've ridden this model at Frontier City, and it's a lot of fun. But that new Eurofighter coming to Glenwood Caverns in 2022 looks like that'll be the top dog when that opens. As for the worst, I'm picking Mind Eraser. Not only an SLC, but one of the worst ones I've ever ridden. Non-stop shakiness and pain. Another park with 3 coasters on my list is New Mexico, all coming from Cliffs Amusement Park. The state has 6 total, with the other 3 coming from Western Playland. But the slam dunk pick here is the New Mexico Rattler, the CCI wooden coaster they started but never finished once they went bankrupt, leaving the park to finish it for themselves. It's a solid wooden coaster, especially for a park this size, and I need to make it a point to get some rerides pretty soon. That leaves Galaxy as the worst coaster. It's not bad, but it's your typical portable county fair coaster. One last state with 3, and that's Oregon, sporting 5 total. Adrenaline Peak at Oaks Park is a really fun ride, and that tops the state. This is the same layout as Hydrus at Casino Pier, and it's naturally a short ride. But for $10, you can get a ride on the best coaster in Oregon. As for the worst, not much else to choose from. But the Big Timber Log Ride is 95% flume and 5% coaster, and this thing drenched me, so I'm not too happy with it, and I got no problem putting it in last place. Next up is Connecticut with 4 coasters on my list, 8 total, the best one being Boulder Dash at Lake Compounds. I know I knocked this one a little bit, but it's still got a great layout on the mountainside, and a great Airtime Hill finale coming back into the station. The worst one has gotta be one of the coasters I haven't ridden yet, and that's Wildcat at the same park. I don't think anyone likes this PTC Woody from 1927, even after its recent retrack. It was close for me, so I'm going on pure reputation. Now for my home state of Oklahoma, where I've ridden 6 of the 8 coasters total. And like Colorado, our best coaster is an Aero Shuttle Loop. This is Diamondback at Frontier City. You get that airtime coming off those launch platforms and a loop in the middle. It packs the biggest punch of any coaster in the state. As for the worst, I'm sorry, but I have to say Wildcat from the same park. That's right, another bad Wildcat, and not the last one on the bad list. It's small and relocated, and ultimately not a terrible ride, but not that good either. Another one with 5 coasters is Washington, sporting 8 total, and the best coaster in the state resides at the Washington State Fair, the 1935 Woody Classic Coaster. It combines that classic Woody feel with some decent airtime, including one moment that's really jarring. The worst coaster to ever operate in Washington was Rainier Rush, also at the State Fair, and this thing was such a janky piece of trash, but it's gone now, so that honor goes to Timberhawk at Wild Waves. SNS may be good at making launch coasters, but they suck at making wooden coasters. This may be big, but it's forceless, and it's one of the most boring coasters I've ever ridden. Of the 6 coasters that I've ridden in the state of Idaho, with 9 total, the best one is Aftershock, the relocated Vekoma Giant Inverted Boomerang, starting its life at Six Flags Great America and coming west in 2008. This runs the original Vekoma trains, and it's still great to this day. Stunt Pilot may be better, but I haven't ridden that yet. Idaho doesn't have a bad coaster, and I hate to knock a Pioneer, but the worst one is Corkscrew, also at Silverwood. This was the first modern inverting coaster when it opened at Knott's back in 1975, relocated to Silverwood in 1990, and it's still running well. It's just very short and basic, and the layout does not hold up over time. Let's see, what's another state with 6?
Kentucky is a state. All the people there are...
Ah yes, Kentucky. It's got 11 coasters total, and I've only been to Kentucky Kingdom, but I think it'll do just fine for this list. Their best coaster is Storm Chaser, a short but brilliant RMC conversion of the old CCI wooden hybrid, Twisted Twins. The wood track was stripped off and replaced with steel iBox track, and this layout is a powerhouse of airtime. The worst coaster is T3, a coaster so bad that even its own park makes fun of it. It's got decent restraints, not the typical headbangers like on most Vekoma SLCs, but it's by far the shakiest SLC I've ever ridden. It feels like it's gonna shake its bolts off, and the whole thing is gonna fall apart. Here's a weird one, North Carolina. I consider 6 of Carowind's coasters part of North Carolina, which only has 8 total, and the selection over there isn't that great, but they can claim the king, one of the best coasters in the world, Fury 325. This crosses into North and South Carolina, but it's mostly on the north side. This Giga is B&M's magnum opus. The worst coaster in the state is yet another B&M, the worst B&M I've ever ridden, and that's Vortex. It's a small-scale stand-up coaster that's pushing 30 years old, and its best days are behind it.
How old are you?
83. How old are you?
31.
Oh.
So let's talk South Carolina. This one claims 7 of Carowind's coasters, which brings their total to 12, and their selection is much better. Copperhead Strike, Afterburn, but I gotta go with Intimidator. It's my favorite coaster in the state, and some of you may disagree, but this is my list, so whatever. For the worst coaster, there wasn't a whole lot to pick from, but I'm going with Nighthawk, the Vekoma Flying Dutchman. This thing isn't that bad. It's a little janky, it's pretty shaky, but it's a pretty fun ride. As far as adult coasters go in South Carolina, they could do a whole lot worse. I finally rode a coaster in Michigan this summer. 7 of them, in fact, all at Michigan's Adventure. And even though there's 15 coasters total in the state, there's little doubt the best coaster is Shivering Timbers, the massive CCI airtime machine that covers over a mile of track. The worst one is also an easy pick for me. No, not Wolverine Wildcat. I'm talking about Corkscrew. Unlike the one at Silverwood, this one was not pleasant, on top of having a weak layout. It was nothing but neck pain from start to finish. The last state in the 7 coaster club is Nevada, which currently only has 5 operating coasters, and I've ridden all of them. This is the only state where the best coaster no longer exists. Speed the Ride at NASCAR Cafe. When the Sahara closed down in 2011, this was dismantled. So the best coaster currently in the state is El Loco at the Adventure Dome. This is super compact with some crazy angles and inversions, which is perfect for an indoor coaster. The worst one is an infamous one, whatever they call the coaster at New York these days. Big Apple, Manhattan Express, hard to keep up. Whatever it is, it's the last remaining Togo in the US, and it's got a bad layout and horrible transitions. There's more than just corn and baseball in Iowa. There's 8 coasters that I just got to ride this summer, 10 total. The best one being Monster at Adventureland, the masterful Gerstlauer Infinity Coaster. This thing is funky, forceful, fast, and everything I wish Hangtime at Knott's could have been. The worst one is also at Adventureland, Tornado, the 1978 wooden coaster that lacks airtime, but makes up for it in roughness. Not a good combo, not a good coaster. I never got to ride Dragon, the Hopkins Looper, but maybe that was the worst coaster in the state before being dismantled. If you rode it, let me know how it compares to Tornado. Off to Maryland with 8 coasters, 20 total. All the ones I've ridden being at Six Flags America, and Superman Ride of Steel takes the cake as the best in the state. This Intamin Hyper has speed, airtime, and one heck of a funky layout, and there's no doubt it's my favorite in the park. As for the worst, I had a few to choose from. but I have to go with one of the worst wooden coasters I've ever ridden in any state. One of the original GCIs, Roar. Yet another rough and boring Woody, and this gave me a throbbing headache last time that was no match for Advil. I had to sleep that one off. The last state with 8 coasters on my list is Tennessee, sporting 21 total. Most of the ones I've ridden coming from Dollywood, home of one of the elite coasters on the planet, and one in my personal top 10, Lightning Rod. I can't wait to ride this with this new steel iBox track, and hopefully it can go back to running with the speed and smoothness it did in its opening year. Regardless, it's by far the best coaster that Tennessee has to offer. The worst one was kinda tough to pick, but I settled on Wild Eagle, also at Dollywood. Some people love this coaster, but I think it does the least with the potential that it has. It's the weakest B&M wing coaster I've ridden, and given the quality of Dollywood's thrill rides, this dishonor goes to Wild Eagle. We'll end part 1 in Wisconsin, and it's 9 coasters that I've ridden, a state full of 12 interesting coasters. And the best one for me is Zippin' Pippin at Bay Beach. It's an absolute airtime machine. Most of it is graceful floater, but then the last hill tries to launch you into Canada, so I call that a nice variety. As for the worst, it was a tight race. Pegasus at Mount Olympus is awful, but I have to go with Swiss Toboggan at Little America. Any coaster that screws up my neck for a week after I ride it has gotta be on the list. This is the type of coaster you can hitch to the back of a truck and wheel anywhere. And personally, I'd like to give it a ride to the dump. It's not fun, it hurts, get rid of it. This is a good place to end this video, talking about the first 35 states with non-existent to small coaster collections. We'll pick this up in part 2, with the 15 states that hit double digits on my coaster list. And we'll dive a little more in depth into my picks for those states, since there was so much more to pick from. As for this episode, let me know what you think of my picks, and what you would have changed. I've ridden almost all of the good coasters in the country, but I know I'm missing a few, so let me know if I missed a great one, or one that was really god-awful. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to drop a like. That's the best way to show your support for the channel. And if you're new here, be sure to sub and hit the bell for more content just like this. And I mean just like this. Part 2 is coming out later this week. Also, check out my links below for my Discord server, where you can chat with other fans of the channel, as well as my second channel, where I post copyright-free off-ride footage. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.